I've reached my limit. I deeply regretted my grandmother's words. Why didn't I take my grandmother with me back then? Why didn't I try to meet her earlier, even if it meant forcing the issue? I held her frail hand that had become just skin and bones. Not knowing what to do, I reached out to someone. While waiting in the hospital corridor, I got a call from Mary Ann. "Oh, did you get to see Grandma? Why the heck are you asking me like that? What's going on with her? Why has Grandma lost so much weight?" "Well, idle folks can't expect luxuries like meals. If you don't work, you don't eat, you know." My grandmother had always worked so hard for us. Certainly harder than Mary Ann, who's always lazing around. "There's something I gotta say." "What is it?" "You're gonna have to take care of that old granny." With that, Mary Ann hung up. If she felt that way, then I'd take care of her. From then on, I took care of my grandmother with all my might. At first, my grandmother looked sorry for us, but over time she started to recover. We need to give those idiots a piece of our mind. My name is Alicia Sutton, a 28-year-old single woman, living at my family home with my grandmother, Josie. I have a brother named Michael and a grandfather who's hospitalized. Our parents passed away in a car accident when I was in middle school. Don't worry, Alicia and Michael. Your grandparents will always protect you. With that, my grandmother held me until I stopped crying. I remember my grandfather comforting Michael by patting his back. From then on, we were taken in by our grandparents. Losing their only son and suddenly taking in 2 growing grandchildren must have been tough on them. While I actively helped out my grandparents, Michael, who was in high school at the time, started to clash with grandfather. I never wanted to come to this rural place in the first place. It seemed Michael couldn't accept the fact that he had to transfer schools because of the move. That being said, I wouldn't say my grandparents' place is that rural. It's in a regular suburban neighborhood with no transportation issues. However, where we used to live, there were places to hang out nearby, but after moving in with my grandparents, those places became distant. Probably why he wasn't too pleased. Gradually, he'd come home late, even staying out all night during high school, leading to big arguments with my grandfather. When he went off to college, he left home and started ignoring all messages from us. I was planning on going to college too, but just before that, my grandfather had a health scare. Michael took the money that was saved for my college when he left, so my grandfather worked hard trying to earn it back. So, I started working right after high school and took turns with my grandmother caring for my grandfather. My grandmother, having been a housekeeper in the past, took care of all the house chores, which allowed me to focus on my job, making ends meet. Alicia, don't overdo it. Remember to take care of yourself even when working. Thanks, but I'm enjoying my job, so I'm okay. The one who helped me was a neighbor, Robert Smith. He became a doctor, but his father is a company CEO. Thanks to Robert's efforts, I got a job in his father's company straight out of high school. Now, I even have a decent position there and owe a lot to Robert. Alicia, the hospital just called. Your grandpa's condition has suddenly worsened. One day, my grandfather's health deteriorated and he never woke up again. I asked Michael to come and at least see our grandfather during his final moments or for the funeral, but he didn't even show up, let alone reply. I was furious at Michael, but supporting my grieving grandmother was my priority. Michael finally showed up when we had finished dealing with our grandfather's possessions and things had calmed down emotionally. Hey, long time no see. Wait, Michael? Is that really you? Forgot what your brother looks like? That's heartless. That's rich coming from you, showing up now of all times. I confronted Michael, but he just brushed it off. Then, from behind him, a flamboyantly dressed woman popped out. Hello, you must be the dull little sister I've heard about. Excuse me? I'm Mary Ann. Technically, I'm your sister-in-law, but since I'm younger, I'll use polite words with you. Mary Ann's father is a CEO. She knows her manners. Their rudeness left me completely taken aback. A woman named Mary Ann was apparently Michael's wife. I didn't even know that Michael had gotten married, and I was very surprised to find out she's younger than me. So, what can I do for ya? My grandmother was still feeling down, so she was resting in her room. That's why I decided to talk with Michael in my grandmother's stead. Grandma's resting. She's lost someone dear to her. Whatever, just leave. What? What's he talking about? That's the first thought that crossed my mind. You'll probably never get married anyway. Marianne is pregnant.
So, what's that got to do with me?
Grandma might want to take care of her great-grandchild, and we're gonna live here. You being here is a bother, and you might bring bad luck. So, leave. Of course, I argued with Michael for saying such things. But when Michael and his wife started moving their things in and threw mine out, I reluctantly left. There was no way I could stand up to Michael, who was always boastful about his fights.
Don't touch my computer. Got it. But take good care of Grandma. If you promise that, I'll leave quietly.
I was gonna look after her anyway. Otherwise, I wouldn't get this house. All of my grandfather's assets went to my grandmother. The only asset was pretty much this house, so he probably moved in with the intention of getting it. I explained everything to my grandmother, who noticed the commotion and decided to leave the house with the essentials. I'm sorry, Alicia. I promised to protect you. Don't worry about it, I'll be okay. My grandmother has been gentle and strict, while Robert has been the exact opposite. She doesn't like confrontations and tends to agree when pushed too hard. So, driving Michael and his wife out would probably be tough. Still, I left in the heat of the moment. As I was wondering what to do, someone called my name.
Hey, Robert! What's up?
I got a call from Josie. You don't know where you're going, do you? Robert and my grandmother have been close enough to exchange contact details. That's probably why she reached out to him. Even though Robert must have been busy, he came over. I've got things sorted on my end, let's go. I'll carry your bags too. Saying that, I followed behind Robert, who kindly took my luggage. I knew things would be fine if I left them to Robert. What worried me more was leaving my grandmother behind at home. I was so filled with concern and anxiety. After settling down at my new place, I called my grandmother. Alicia, are you all right? Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine, don't worry. But what about you, grandmother? Are you okay? Well, actually. My grandmother hesitated a bit, but then she told me about the situation at home. Apparently, Marianne was using her pregnancy as an excuse to not do any house chores and just lazed around on the couch all day. Sometimes, she even left in the afternoon and didn't come back until nighttime. What's Michael doing? He seems to be working, but he doesn't contribute any money. Moreover, Marianne says that since he can't earn much, I shouldn't complain. It seemed like Michael and Marianne were ganging up and being unfairly critical of my grandmother. By the way, they seemed to be using the savings I had deposited when I lived with them. I'm sorry for using it without asking. It's okay. Use the money in that account as you see fit. Thank you. I truly am sorry, Alicia. By the way, doing all the household chores at my age is really tough. Indeed, even though my grandmother can handle housework, she's already 75. When I had lived with her, we used to share chores once I got used to my job, but it seemed Michael and his wife were piling everything onto my grandmother. After ending the call with my grandmother, I called Michael. It seemed to be his lunch break, so Michael answered pretty quickly. What is it?
I heard from Grandmother. You're not contributing money and pushing all the housework onto her, especially after we just lost Grandfather.
Shut up. We're the ones taking care of her. You, with no marriage in sight, should just keep quiet. And with that, Michael hung up. After that, I sent a message on WhatsApp to comfort my grandmother, but he left it unread. I got really irritated by Michael's attitude. How did someone like him come from my kind parents and grandparents? I was still stewing over this when I got a message from Marianne.
Heard from someone that you had issues with the way we do things? Coming from a jobless single woman who just sits at home, huh?
Even over the phone, her condescending tone was clear. Jobless and staying at home? What's she talking about? What are you talking about?
I have a job. You don't have to lie. Your grandmother told me you just sit at home on your computer all day.
Seemed like she mistook my remote working for being jobless. My grandmother knew I was working, I was sure she explained it to her. Yet, Marianne, who's younger than me, didn't seem to get it.
You're just jealous because we took the house you wanted to stay shut in. Just stay quiet, jobless lady.
With that, Marianne hung up. She seemed to have quite a twisted personality. I sighed deeply. From then on, I couldn't get in touch with my grandmother and became increasingly worried.
Alicia, is Josie all right?
Robert suddenly asked me this after days of my growing concern.
Sorry, what are you talking about? About 2 weeks ago, Josie came to our hospital.
Hearing this, I was taken aback and pressed Robert for more details. Apparently, my grandmother had an accident with a bicycle on her way back from shopping and was taken to the hospital. So it just so happened that Robert, who's an orthopedic specialist, was assigned to her case, and the diagnosis was a broken leg. She had to stay in the hospital for a while, and she was just discharged the other day. Only Marianne came to pick her up. Moreover, Marianne was berating the grandmother, so Robert stepped in and intervened, as he told me.
Why didn't you tell me sooner? I'm sorry. Josie asked me not to worry you and to keep it a secret until she was discharged. Also, I did inform your sister-in-law Marianne, but she said you were too busy to come.
I had indeed been busy with work the past few days. So, Robert just took her word for it. I immediately reached out to my grandmother and Michael. However, I couldn't get through to either of them, so reluctantly I called Marianne, who responded with a clearly annoyed tone.
Ugh, it's you again? Why are you so persistent? I heard grandmother broke her leg.
Oh wow, wonder who spilled the beans.
Anyway, why is it any of your business?
Of course, it's my business.
I'm gonna visit home soon.
I can't deal with you, so I'll ask grandmother directly. Her attitude was, as usual, infuriating. I didn't want to leave grandmother in her care, but Marianne was like, "You can't. If you want to visit her, pay a fee. $100 an hour. If you can't pay, you can't see her." Marianne then hung up. I still went to my childhood home, but she pretended not to be home and turned me away, making it impossible to see my grandmother. My days of worry and frustration changed when I got a rare call from Michael. "Hey, you still living that miserable life of yours?"
That's rude to just say out of the blue. Stop messing around and let me see grandmother.
All right. Go ahead. I was taken aback by how easily he gave permission. I thought he was gonna say I'd never see her again, but
Marianne has settled down a bit, so we're gonna take a trip.
What? We're leaving that old lady, your grandmother, to you. Oh, and when you get to the house, make sure to clean up, okay? Thanks for the cash, by the way. Michael said and hung up. His talk about money and cleaning was confusing, but what surprised me more was them going on a trip and leaving my grandmother with a broken leg behind. I quickly headed to my childhood home.
Grandma!
The home was nothing like the tidy place my grandmother used to keep, it was a mess. I searched for my grandmother, trying not to let the mess bother me. Alicia.
Grandma!
I found my grandmother in a cramped room that had become a storage space. My grandmother was barely laid out on a mattress in there. I rushed over immediately. I've reached my limit. Hearing my grandmother say this, I was filled with immense regret. Why didn't I take my grandmother with me back then? Why didn't I forcefully try to see her sooner? I held her frail, bony hand. Not knowing what to do, I reached out to someone for help.
Alicia! Josie!
Robert came over as soon as I called for help. He gave my grandmother a quick examination and administered first aid. As we were doing that, an ambulance arrived and took my grandmother.
Thank you for coming. But, how did you get here faster than the ambulance?
I was already in the area because I was worried about her. Robert always comforted me when I was overwhelmed with anxiety. He was waiting with me, as my grandmother was being treated. While waiting in the hospital corridor, I received a call from Marianne.
Oh, did you get to see Grandma? Why the heck are you asking me like that? What's going on with her? Why has Grandma lost so much weight?
Well, idle folks can't expect luxuries like meal. If you don't work, you don't eat, you know. My grandmother has worked hard all her life. Certainly more than Marianne, who mostly just lounged around.
There's something else I wanted to tell you. What is it? I'm leaving Granny with you.
Marianne hung up after saying that.
If that's what she wants, I'll take care of her.
Robert nodded in agreement with my statement. After that, I took my grandmother in and cared for her with all my might.
If you need anything, just let me know.
In fact, after being kicked out of my parents' house, I had been staying with Robert. Whenever I tried to leave, Robert would stop me. Given my mental instability, we kind of ended up living together like a couple. He even agreed to take in my grandmother, and he's been helping with her care from then on. Initially, my grandmother seemed to feel guilty towards us, but gradually she started to recover remarkably.
I need to give a piece of my mind to those damn fools.
She'd say that, working hard at her physical therapy so she might be able to move on soon.
I've put you through so much, Robert, looking after Grandma and all. Don't worry about it. For the woman I love and someone who's done so much for me, it's actually a pleasure.
Actually, Robert had been trying to get closer to me for a while. I liked him too, but with my grandmother needing care, I kept a little distance from him. Just when I was finally ready to give him an answer, Michael and his crew showed up, so I still haven't given my response. It's turned out, Robert's parents are a busy CEO and lawyer, and when he was younger, a nearby grandmother used to take care of him. So he's helping out as a way to repay that kindness.
Hey, the house is still a mess.
I was pointed out about a month after taking in my grandmother when Michael finally reached out. He seemed to have been on a pretty long vacation, which was surprising.
I told you to handle it, didn't I?
I never said I'd do it. Besides, you think you can just leisurely contact me without any repercussions? What do you mean? Aren't you getting calls from the company? I could tell from the other end of the phone that Michael was taken aback. I couldn't help but laugh at his reaction.
Why are you so shocked?
I let Michael in on a little secret.
You know one of the big companies your firm deals with? That's where I work. And I happen to be good friends with the CEO. When I told him about this, he was furious and said he'd end the business relationship if he has an employee like you.
Michael let out an almost inaudible scream. This deal was crucial for the future of Michael's company. If it's called off, the loss would be immense, and it's unimaginable what kind of repercussions Michael would face.
Why on earth are you close with the CEO?
Simple. I'm the next in line to become CEO. While Robert chose a path in medicine, I was expected to take on the leadership role in the future. The company president and his wife have always shown me kindness, treating me as if I were their own daughter. I've heard everything from Grandma. Marianne took away Grandma's phone so she couldn't contact anyone, and Marianne took the money I sent home to use for her trip. I'll never forgive you too. Bye. With that, I hung up the phone. I blocked all their contact information. Finally, letting out all the pent-up frustration felt so refreshing. I thought things would be peaceful for a while, but that wasn't the case.
Alicia!
Ugh, why are you here? As I left the office, Michael and Marianne were waiting for me. The two approached me quickly with grim expressions.
We've been through hell because of you.
And without waiting for a response, they started complaining. Apparently, due to this situation, Michael was heavily reprimanded by Marianne's father, who is the company president. Furthermore, in front of other employees, he was loudly blamed for occupying the home and for the issues with Grandma. Word spread throughout the company, and he was looked down upon by everyone. Given that Marianne's father is a sensible man and because Michael, assuming he'd be the next company president, had a terrible work attitude, he got fired.
You got what you deserve, right? Stop joking around!
By the way, the reason they occupied the home was for Michael to join Marianne's father's company. They wanted to move here, but they didn't want to live in the strict house of Marianne's father. They figured our home was spacious enough, and they wouldn't need to spend money buying a new place.
But because of you, we got kicked out of that house.
The house was still under my grandmother's name. And in her anger over this whole situation, during Michael and Marianne's trip, Grandma sold the house. As a result, the two of them lost both their job and home almost immediately upon returning from the vacation. So, what do you want from me?
It's your fault, so help us out. Yeah, because of you, Dad's mad at us.
Listening to the two of them whining for help was overwhelming. Do these two have no shame?
You two sure are selfish.
Oh, hey Robert, good day. Alicia, thank you for all your hard work. Just then, Robert came along with my grandmother. Ever since the incident, my grandmother's recovered and been able to move around on her own if she was in a wheelchair. The look on my grandmother's face was pure anger.
This dumb grandson of mine. You better not cause any more trouble for Alicia.
Thanks to her surge of anger, my grandmother stood up and grabbed Michael by the collar. My grandmother has always been kind-hearted, but when angered, she's scarier than anyone else. Michael knew this all too well, so he let out a slight scream.
You're no grandson of mine. I cut ties with you. Grandma! Oh, same here. I don't want to think of you as my brother anymore. So I'm cutting ties with you right here and now. And I'm definitely not gonna help you guys out.
At my words, Michael and his wife went pale.
Oh, there's something important you both need to know.
Robert helped my grandmother back into her wheelchair and gave a big, genuine smile. He was clearly upset about what happened, so Michael and his wife were probably in deep trouble.
My dad's the CEO of this company, and my mom's a lawyer. They looked into you too after what happened. And during that, they found something out about you, Marianne.
At Robert's words, Marianne shuddered. And Michael gave a puzzled look.
That baby you're carrying, it's not Michael's, is it? It's from your affair, right?
Well. She was stammering. And I could tell Michael was taken aback.
What the hell is going on? Shut up. Did you really think I was serious about an old guy like you?
Despite being in a public place, the two started to argue loudly. We just called the police and then left. A few minutes later, the couple was taken away by the police. Later, one of Robert's mom's colleagues sued the couple. They were taken in by the police and eventually charged with neglect. Marianne's father, a CEO on the other end, sincerely apologized for the trouble his daughter had caused. He promised not to abandon the two, so business dealings resumed. These two will surely face hell even after they're released. Several apology letters came to my grandmother and me from Michael, but we just read and tossed them away. My grandmother had burned letters from him several times without even reading them. Yet, it seems Michael had divorced Marianne. Marianne's child has apparently taken in by some wealthy couple in New York. Since they claimed they'd raised the child properly without spoiling him, we decided to leave it in their hands for now.
I have gifts for Alicia and Josie.
The family estate that was on sale was bought by Robert. Thanks to Robert, the house filled with memories with my grandfather was saved. Furthermore, Robert decided to live in that house with my grandmother.
Robert really saved us. I just returned the favor. Besides, I wanted to be happy with Alicia.
After that, I married Robert. We had been dating for only 6 months, but considering the long wait, it was quite fast. Still, we were very happy. Furthermore, I was promoted in my company, and I am now officially being trained under my father-in-law as the next CEO. Seeing me in my bridal attire, my grandmother seemed reinvigorated with the hope of seeing her great-grandchild and eventually started walking with a cane.
What's up? Well, since I live in this house, I thought Michael and Marianne would come.
Oh, my parents took care of that. Apparently, Michael tried to get in touch with us, but was taken somewhere by the employees who adore me under my in-laws. As for Marianne, she couldn't return home, couldn't meet her child, disappeared into the nightlife of New York, and her whereabouts remain unknown. Later on, I gave birth to a lovely son. The news set both my grandmother and my in-laws into a frenzy of excitement. The future of this boy is still uncertain, but I hope he grows up to be a kind man like Robert and not a troublemaker like Michael.
I am so blessed and happy.
I genuinely smiled during those happy times. Robert too had a contented look on his face.
When he grows up a bit more, we should all go to somewhere for a vacation. If you say that, Grandma might get so excited she might start running again.
Saying so, the time we spend laughing together is truly precious.